Expanding this story to 3,000 words while keeping it immersive, atmospheric, and deeply unsettling will require adding more detail, character depth, and slow-burning tension. Below is the fully rewritten extended version of The Firekeeper, one that lingers in the mind long after the fire has gone out. #### The Firekeeper. I leaned forward, the old shovel heavy in my hands, its rusted iron blade barely visible beneath layers of soot and decay. The tool had once been meant for digging, for shaping the earth, but time had eroded its purpose, much like it had eroded me. Now it was only useful for stirring the embers, for pushing back the cold, and for keeping the fire alive. The damp air clung to my skin, thick with the scent of moss and charred wood. The valley was always like this, low, smothered in mist, the kind that slithered through the trees and curled around the trunks like restless spirits. It made everything sluggish, the fire especially. Flames did not come easily here. They were shy, reluctant to grow. I crouched low, bringing my face close to the embers I had carried down from the hearth back home. A deep breath, then a slow exhale through pursed lips, sending a ripple of heat across the ashen surface. The embers trembled, light flickering within them like tiny trapped souls. For a brief moment, I saw myself reflected in the glow, hollow eyes, sunken cheeks, the same face I had come to recognize only in glimpses. The fire lived more than I did. But just as quickly as they flared, the embers faded again, barely clinging to life. I blew harder, willing them to stay, to catch, to consume. The smoke that rose burned my throat, acrid and thick, but I did not stop. My hands worked without thought, stacking dry wood, feeding the embers, coaxing them to wake. Finally, reluctantly, the fire began to spread. Small, flickering tongues of orange and gold licked at the damp logs, curling around the edges, claiming them. The night pressed in around me, heavy and unrelenting. It had been days since I last saw the moon. Maybe longer. I couldn't be sure anymore. It should have been there, hanging silver above the valley, but its light never reached this deep. And now, I couldn't even remember the last time I had seen its pale face through the trees. Had it abandoned me too? The weight in my chest grew heavier. I turned my attention back to the fire. As the flames took hold, the light pushed back the shadows, revealing the stones beside me. A small, neat pile of river rocks, smooth, oblong, carefully collected from the stream behind the house. Some fit snugly in my palm, others were the size of my boot. I had placed them here, stacked them just so. But as the fire grew, so did the pile. The light stretched further, revealing more stones. Another pile. Then another. And then a broken one. Scattered stones, displaced earth, an open wound in the ground. A sick feeling crawled up my throat. What do the hound dogs eat when the people are frail? The voice slithered through the trees, curling around me like the mist. It was soft, almost a whisper, but it carried weight, sinking into the marrow of my bones. I clenched the shovel tighter, my fingers whitening around the handle. I did not look up. I did not turn. Instead, I focused on the fire. A clump of moss caught in the flames, curling inward, turning black. How easy it was to disappear like that. The firelight grew, casting away the darkness inch by inch. More of the clearing was revealed. More stones. More open wounds. And then, a hole. Deep and wrong. The dirt around it pushed outward as if something had clawed its way up. The texture of the soil was strange, not loose like normal earth, but packed, slick, unnatural. Like a crayfish den. Only large enough to fit my head inside. And at that moment I wanted to. Where does the smoke from your lungs go when you exhale? The forest held its breath. No wind. No rustling leaves. No insects beneath the bark. Nothing moved. The deer never left the thickets anymore. The only sound was the crackling of my fire. My fire. My burden. My responsibility. I had to keep it burning. I fed it more wood, watching as the light stretched further, revealing more and more of what lay beyond. More disturbed stones. More holes. More places where the earth had been opened. Some of the stones had cracked. Others had dark stains on them. And then, a sound. A faint clatter. I did not move. I did not look. But my grip on the shovel tightened, the old wood pressing splinters into my palms. I shifted my eyes just enough to see. A stone had shifted. Near the top of the nearest pile, a small, smooth rock had tilted slightly, disturbed by something unseen. Beneath it, something dark gleamed in the firelight. An oily, thick substance oozed from the cracks between the stones. It seeped outward, sluggish and unnatural, pooling at the base of the pile. I drew a sharp breath. Something inside my chest lurched, and panic spread like a fire inside me. I exhaled too quickly, too forcefully, my breath burning my throat. More of the black liquid oozed out, pushing stones aside, breaking apart the careful arrangement. The smell hit me all at once. Thick, rotten, suffocating. My stomach twisted and I turned away, gagging, bile rising. I clutched at my chest, feeling the thick, raised scars beneath my shirt. The pain flared, sharp and electric, as if the old wounds had been reopened. Tears blurred my vision. I was grateful for it. I did not want to see. I did not want to see when the soil began to bubble. Mud churned, thick and wet, rolling away in globs. And then, something surfaced. Something wrong. At first, it was just a hint of texture beneath the filth, fibrous, raw. Then, a pulsing, dark mass, slick with sinew and vein. A muscle. A heart. A thing that should not be. It throbbed. It breathed. Asterisk, HOWDEPCANYOUBURYYOURGUILT? Asterisk. The voice came from everywhere. It was inside me. It was inside the earth. It was inside the stones. My throat tore itself open with a sound I did not recognize. I stumbled back, my body moving on instinct, reaching for the only thing that mattered. The fire. I threw more logs on. The flames roared, consuming, eating, spreading. I had to keep it alive. I had to burn it away. The shovel, still in my hands, still my lifeline, plunged into the dirt. I dug. Dirt flew. I worked until my hands bled, until my arms shook, until the pain in my chest was unbearable. Another pile of river stones took shape. Another careful arrangement. A place to bury what should never have been unearthed. The fire burned. I made sure of it. And in the distance, the holes kept opening. Warlock. I am writing this from a small, dimly lit motel room in Los Angeles, staring at the shadow of 1777 Washington Boulevard through the rain-streaked window. The shadow stretches unnaturally far, farther than it should, considering the angle of the sun. It reaches across the pavement like grasping fingers, curling at the edges as if alive. I'm tired of running. There's nowhere left to go. It has pushed us to the very edge of the continent. Manifest destiny incarnate. With a whimper we will go. The man who wanted to be a god. There exists an old interview from the early 2000s, one of those glossy business magazine pieces, where they put a billionaire on the cover and pretend he's something more than just a man. It was before the world truly knew John Unk, before his name was whispered in fearful tones, before he built 1777 Washington Boulevard. He sat in a high-rise office then, a glimmering Detroit skyline behind him, his fingers steepled together, eyes sharp and calculating. He was discussing his philosophy of investment. I want technology, sure, Unk said, but I want it with physical manifestations. I'm not interested in apps in the purely digital. I want to make self-driving cars, rocket ships, satellites. I want to populate planets. I want to make magic in the real world. Magic. It was an odd word choice, wasn't it? At the time, the interviewer had laughed, assuming Unk meant innovation, the kind of hollow term Silicon Valley types love to throw around. But Unk didn't laugh. He only smiled, as if he had just shared something profound that no one had truly understood. The city that died. Detroit was a jewel of a city once. A shining titan of industry. The heartbeat of American labor. Then, piece by piece, the industry left. Manufacturing vanished. The wealth bled out. What remained was an empty husk, a corpse left rotting in the sun. Buildings collapsed. Windows shattered. Streets fell silent. The people who could afford to leave did. The ones who couldn't were swallowed by the ruin. Property values plummeted. So it was a shock when John Unk, billionaire and techno-industrialist, purchased a massive plot of land in the heart of Detroit and announced his plan to build a headquarters. 1777 Washington Boulevard. Why here? Reporters asked. Unk's answer was simple. I like the view. No one believed him. And yet, if he had followed up with, because here is the true axis of the world, perhaps someone, just one person, might have understood. Roots that go too deep. Construction began immediately. To the average passerby, it seemed like any other building project. Steel, glass, towering cranes. Another attempt to bring life back to a dead city. But something was wrong. Workers quit in droves. The few who stayed on spoke of oddities, things they could not quite explain. Tools went missing only to be found buried deep in the earth. Concrete poured itself into unnatural shapes, forming angles that should not exist. Then, months later, a city official reviewing blueprints made a discovery that sent ice into his veins. The building was like an iceberg. For every floor built upward, 100 had been excavated below. I want to put down roots, Unk had once said, and he had meant it. the day the world changed. I was there the day 1777 Washington Boulevard officially opened. The sky was gunmetal gray. A storm had been forecasted. Thunder growled at the edges of the horizon. I was part of the crowd gathered at the base of the building, watching as the ceremony unfolded. And I swear to you, it was not like any grand opening anyone had ever seen. There were shamans, dressed in ceremonial garb, their eyes glazed over in deep trance, their bodies writhing in impossible ways. Gallons of thick red liquid, too much to be mere animal blood, were poured down the building's smooth, windowless sides. And then John Unk stepped forward. He spoke, and none of us knew the words. They were not of any earthly language. Yet we understood. We understood because our bodies rebelled. Our skin prickled. Our bones ached. The air around us became heavier, as if something vast and ancient had awakened beneath our feet. Some tried to scream, but the drums drowned us out. Then came the red rains. And when the great storm cloud formed, swirling into the shape of a wide-brimmed hat, I knew, we all knew, that it was too late. The building that breathes. The hat of the storm descended upon the building. And 1777 Washington Boulevard came alive. Not in the way a machine hums to life. Not in the way a city stirs in the morning. It breathed. It pulsed. The windows, where there had been none before, opened like unblinking eyes. The walls shivered, sighed, stretched. And the shadow it cast, God help us, that shadow. It stretched impossibly far. Everything caught within it aged in an instant. Metals corroded. Flowers wilted. Men became bones, became dust. I saw John Unk himself standing on the steps, staring up at his creation. He took one step forward. And before his foot even touched the ground, he was gone. He withered away in darkness before reaching the doors. The floating horror. Lightning raked the sky. And then, the impossible happened. The building began to detach from the ground. Slowly, as if shaking free from unseen restraints, 1777 Washington Boulevard lifted into the air. Not with the grace of flight, but with the eerie weightlessness of a thing that had never truly belonged to this earth. And then, moved. It began to drift forward, its unnatural shadow stretching over the city, claiming everything it touched. We ran. But there was nowhere to run. Its shadow spread like a plague, consuming all in its path. The moment it touched a building, that structure collapsed into rust and decay. When it reached a street, the asphalt cracked, splintered, dissolved. And when its darkness fell over a man, he did not scream. He did not resist. He simply ceased to be. 7. The end that has yet to come. That was 1 year ago. Since then, 1777 Washington Boulevard has never stopped moving. It drifts aimlessly, devouring cities, towns, forests, oceans. It does not stop. It does not slow. And the sun, oh God, the sun. It has remained locked behind the building ever since. The world is in perpetual twilight, the last light of the sun forever stretching behind it, casting a long and endless shadow. And once that shadow falls upon all things, it will be over. That is why I have come to Los Angeles. I am at the very edge of the world. Beyond here there is only ocean. There is nowhere left to run. The shadow of 1777 Washington Boulevard stretches across the street now. It is at my window. I'm tired. And outside the world begins to wither. Forest Hill's secret. I don't know how much time I have left. I don't know if it can reach me here. But I know one thing, I should not have gone into that forest. I should have listened to the people in that small town. I should have turned around. But I didn't. And now I am broken. I see it in my dreams. I feel its breath on my skin when I wake up in the middle of the night. It is always waiting. This is my story. I don't know if anyone will believe me, but if you are reading this, do not go to that forest. Do not search for the truth. Run and do not stop running. Because if you find it, it will find you too. The journey to nowhere. A few weeks ago, I traveled from New York to Panama with 5 friends. We wanted adventure. We wanted to explore the untouched beauty of nature. We had no idea what we were walking into. It took 3 days to reach our destination. The flight was the easy part. Then came the search for lodging near the forest. That took 2 days. The locals seemed uneasy when we told them what we planned to do. And then there was the forest itself. It was thick, ancient, almost impenetrable. It felt like it didn't want us there. The last town we stopped at was near Cerro Campana, a mountain nestled in the depths of Panama. I don't remember the exact name of the town. I wish I did, but everything feels like a fever dream now. When we arrived, something felt off. The streets were mostly empty. The buildings looked abandoned but not ruined, as if the people had left in a hurry but never came back. The few locals who spoke to us warned us to leave. "That place is not safe," they said in low, hushed voices. "If you must go, be careful. And if you find it, run. Do not stop, because it has a thirst for blood." We laughed it off. It was just another urban legend, right? How wrong we were. The forest that watches. We hiked for hours before finally finding the perfect camping spot. It was a clearing surrounded by thick trees with a small space for a campfire. The air was too still, but we ignored it. We were young, fearless. We set up our tents, made a fire, and sat in a circle telling stories. One friend talked about his trip to Colombia. Another told us about his time in Canada. And then it was midnight. I looked at my watch. 12 a.m. That's when we started telling scary stories. The first story was about a woman murdered by her jealous husband, her mouth slit from ear to ear. The second was about a creature that stalked its victims in the Panamanian forests, waiting for them to be alone. The fire crackled. Shadows danced against the trees. An hour passed. Maybe two. I checked my watch again. 12:02 a.m. My stomach twisted. That wasn't possible. We had been talking for at least an hour. But only 2 minutes had passed. "Your watch is broken," someone said. I nodded, trying to believe that. But deep down, something in me knew. Time was not moving normally. The night that never ends. We lay down in our tents, exhausted. I closed my eyes. The snap. A branch breaking in the distance. Then another. We all sat up at once. We grabbed our flashlights and unzipped the tents. The night was darker than before. It felt heavy, like something unseen was pressing down on us. I looked at my watch again. 12:03 a.m. 1 minute. Just 1 minute had passed. That's when we saw it. A tall, dark figure in the trees. It was watching us. And then, it moved. Fast. Too fast. It was there 1 second, then gone the next. Our group erupted into panic. "It's nothing," someone said. "We're just tired." But I knew better. We crawled back into our tents, pretending we could still sleep. But when we woke up, it was still night. I checked my watch. 12:04 a.m. The blood hunt. Panic set in. We needed to leave. We packed up as fast as we could, but when we turned to leave, David was gone. David, we shouted. No answer. Then a scream. Blood-curdling. Far yet too close at the same time. We ran. We didn't know where we were going, only that we needed to get out. Branches snapped behind us. Something was following us. One by one, my friends vanished. I heard their screams, but when I turned to look, there was nothing. Nothing but shadows. And then, a house. A rotting wooden cabin standing where it hadn't been before. My last remaining friend and I ran inside. It was silent. Too silent. And then, footsteps. Inside the cabin. Something was in there with us. The monster in the dark. And then we saw it. The thing. It stepped out of the shadows, slow and deliberate. It had black, rotting ski stretched over a twisted, skeletal frame. Its eyes were too large, glowing white like fog lights in the dark. Its arms were too long, ending in razor-sharp claws. And its mouth, God, its mouth. Rows of jagged yellow teeth stretching far too wide. It grinned at us. Then it moved. Grabbed my friend. Dragged her, kicking and screaming, into the dark. I heard bones breaking. I heard her flesh tearing. Then, silence. And then, a sound. A low, guttural growl. I ran. But it chased me. The escape that wasn't. The trees became a blur. My lungs burned. Then, the ground disappeared. I fell. When I woke up, it was daylight. The forest was gone. I was lying on a dirt road. And in front of me, nailed to a wooden post, a sign. Do not pass. I turned. There was nothing behind me. No trees. No cabin. No forest. I stumbled to my car, hands trembling. I don't remember driving back. I don't remember how I got home. But I know one thing. It wasn't a dream. It was real. And now, it is still watching me. The curse that follows. I see it in the corners of my vision. At night, I hear its footsteps in my apartment. I feel its breath on my skin when I close my eyes. It followed me. And I don't think I can escape. So if you ever find yourself near Cerro Campana, if you ever see a sign that says, "Do not pass," turn around. Do not go into the forest. Because if you find it, we'll find you too. Me and my best friend went into an abandoned building, and I haven't seen her since. I don't know if writing this will change anything. I don't know if anyone will believe me, but I have to try. Because no one else seems to remember her. No one remembers Sasha. Not her family. Not our friends. Not even the internet. It's like she never existed. But she did. I know she did. And I know what I saw that night. I wish I could say this was just some bad dream, some twisted, fragmented memory distorted by time. But I have spent every waking moment of the past year replaying it in my head, trying to make sense of it, trying to find a loophole, a crack in reality where I could reach in and pull her back. Nothing. So now I'm telling my story here, hoping someone, anyone, knows something. Because if she's still out there, I need to bring her back. The start of everything. I've always been into ghosts, abandoned places, and urban exploring. Blame it on growing up watching YouTube channels like Sam and Colby. The thrill of going into a place where people weren't supposed to be, the mystery of it, it fascinated me. So, when I finally found a friend who shared my interest, we were set. Sasha and I were inseparable. We were both 13 years old, both reckless, both obsessed with the unknown. That night, we wanted to start small. There was an abandoned buffet a few blocks from our local mall. We had seen it 100 times before, its dusty windows and faded sign just begging to be explored. We had tried to get in before, but the doors were always boarded up. That night, we found another way in. A broken window. And we climbed through. Inside the forgotten place. The air inside was thick with dust and decay. It smelled stale, like something long dead had settled into the walls. Everything inside was frozen in time. Overturned chairs, graffiti on the walls, shattered glass littering the floor. For a moment, I felt a strange nostalgia. I used to come here with my dad before it shut down. I could almost picture it as it once was. Bright lights, the sound of laughter, the clatter of plates at the buffet line. But now it was a graveyard. A place where time had collapsed in on itself. The first signs. At first it was fun. We whispered excitedly, using our phone flashlights to guide the way. Then I noticed it. Signs of squatters. Old blankets in the corner. A half-empty bottle of water. A shoe. Someone had been here recently. Sasha, maybe we should go, I whispered. She just rolled her eyes. Relax. We'll be fine. I hesitated. Something felt off. But I didn't want to be the coward. So I followed her deeper inside. When it started, we were joking around, trying to lighten the mood. I stopped near the old ice cream machine, pretending to push a button. You think this thing still works? I laughed. Silence. I turned, expecting Sasha to be right behind me. She wasn't. I was alone. A cold, twisting panic gripped my stomach. Sasha? No answer. I waved my flashlight around. Nothing. I called her phone. Rang. Then, a click. The call ended. I redialed. Straight to voicemail. The ringing had come from the kitchen. My heart pounded as I followed the sound. I stepped into the darkened kitchen area, my phone light bouncing off rusted stoves and grimy countertops. Then silence. No Sasha. Just emptiness. And then, footsteps. The figure in the dark. I spun around. Nothing. I was breathing too fast. Sasha, if this is a joke, it's not funny. I turned back toward the exit. That's when I saw it. A figure. Standing in the same window we had climbed through. It was holding Sasha's phone. But it wasn't Sasha. It was tall, too tall. Its body was long, thin, and distorted, as if something had tried to mimic a human but had gotten the proportions all wrong. Its skin was smooth and pale, stretched too tightly over its bones. And its face. There was no face. Just a smooth, empty surface, like it had never needed one. I couldn't breathe. Then, my phone rang. My hands shook as I picked it up. It was Sasha. I answered. And I wish I hadn't. The call that changed everything. The screams were the first thing I heard. Sasha's screams. Inside the building. Then static. And then, silence. I ran. I don't remember thinking. I just ran. But before I reached the window, the figure moved. Not like a person. Not like anything human. It twitched, its limbs bending at impossible angles, like a puppet on tangled strings. And then, it took a step forward. I don't know what took over me, but I ran straight for the busy street outside. I didn't stop. I didn't look back. I just ran. And I left Sasha behind. The girl who never was. I didn't stop running until I was home. I was shaking, barely able to breathe. I called Sasha's phone again. Disconnected. I texted her. Nothing. I went to her house the next morning. It was empty. Her family was gone. No forwarding address. No moving trucks. Just gone. I checked social media. Her profile was deleted. I asked our friends. They didn't remember her. They looked at me like I was insane. Who's Sasha? I showed them pictures. They shrugged. Dude, that's just you in the photo. You were alone. 8. The final truth. It's been a year. I have done everything to find her. Police? No missing person reports. Internet searches? Nothing. It's like she never existed. But she did. I know she did. And every night, I see it in my dreams. That tall, deformed thing. It watches me from the dark. Waiting. Smiling, if it even has a mouth. And sometimes, just before I wake up, I hear it whispering. Not in words. Just sounds. Something trying to sound human. Trying to say my name. I know it's coming for me next. And this time, I don't think I'll wake up. The thing in the window. I don't know how much time I have left. I don't even know if anyone will believe me. But I have to write this down before it's too late. Before it decides to come inside. For the past week I've been watched. There's something in my window. Not outside, not a reflection, but actually in the glass. It shouldn't be there. And it shouldn't be able to move. But it does. I can't take my eyes off it for too long. Because every time I look away it gets closer. The first time I saw it, it started last Monday. I had been working from home, staring at my laptop screen for hours. It was late, maybe 2 a.m., when I finally decided to take a break. I leaned back in my chair, stretching, when I caught movement from the corner of my eye. The window. At first, I thought it was a trick of the light, just a smudge on the glass reflecting something weird from inside the house. But then, moved. My stomach dropped. There was something pressed up against the glass. A figure, tall and unnaturally thin, standing inside the window itself as if it were part of the glass. It was featureless, just skin stretched over a human-shaped frame. No eyes, no mouth, no hair. Nothing. But I could feel it looking at me. A cold wave of dread crashed over me. My first instinct was to run outside to see if someone had set up a mannequin or some kind of prank. Maybe some asshole had put it there to scare me. So I grabbed a flashlight and stepped out onto the lawn. But the window was empty. No figure. No face. Just glass. I stood there, feeling like an idiot. My heart was still hammering, but I forced myself to breathe. Maybe it was just exhaustion. Maybe I had imagined it. I turned around, ready to go back inside. Then I looked at the window again. And it was there. Still pressing against the glass. Still facing me. I was outside. The window was clear. But when I went back inside, it was waiting. Watching. I tried to shake it off. I tried to ignore it. But I felt it there all night. And every time I turned away, every time I let my guard down, it got closer. The game it plays. By Wednesday I was losing my mind. It never moved when I was looking directly at it. The moment I glanced away, I'd look back to find it shifted. Sometimes just an inch. Sometimes an entire foot closer. I tested it, left the room, counted to 10, then rushed back in. It had moved again. Its body was pressed tighter against the glass as if trying to push through. That's when I noticed the eyes. Not visible at first. Not in the way a normal face has eyes. But beneath its smooth, blank skin, something was moving. Pressing outward. Two bulging orbs shifting under the flesh like they were trying to push their way free. And its mouth. I hadn't seen one before. But now, something beneath the skin was stretching, the outline of lips and teeth pushing against the surface like they were trapped inside. I didn't sleep that night. The window that won't open. By Thursday I was done playing games. I was going to open the window and get rid of this thing once and for all. I grabbed a crowbar and went straight to the glass, heart pounding. Up close it was worse. The thing's hands were now pressed against the glass, fingers too long, too sharp, the skin shifting and pulsing like it was barely holding itself together. I grabbed the window latch. It wouldn't budge. I pulled harder. The thing's hands twitched. It was holding it shut. That's when it smiled. The skin split open, peeling back over its mouth like it had been sealed shut for centuries. And beneath, rows of impossible teeth, jagged and uneven, lining a cavernous, black throat. Then it spoke. Not out loud, but inside my head. Let me in. I threw the crowbar and ran. The duct tape mistake. That's when I made the worst mistake of all. I tried to cover the window. I grabbed a roll of duct tape, ripping pieces off as fast as I could, sticking them across the glass to block it out. I couldn't look at it anymore. I couldn't take it staring at me. I was shaking as I worked, trying not to look directly at it, but I couldn't help myself. I peeked. It was furious. Its jaw had torn even wider, the gaping hole of its mouth now stretching down to its chest. And the rumble. A deep, vibrating growl began to fill the room, like something huge and ancient was waking up. The glass began to crack. A thin, hairline fracture splintering out from where its hand pressed against it. I froze. Then I grabbed the duct tape again. I ripped more pieces off, slapping them back onto the window, covering its face completely. The growling stopped. The crack stopped spreading. And when I was finally done, when the window was completely covered, I collapsed onto the floor, gasping for breath. It was over. Or so I thought. The thing in the room. That night, my house was silent. No wind. No sounds. Nothing. I sat at my desk, trying to distract myself, trying to convince myself that it was gone. And then, I felt a hand on my shoulder. I went completely still. A faint, wet stretching noise filled the air behind me, like flesh being pulled into a grin. It wasn't in the window anymore. It was behind me. I turned slowly. There was nothing there. But I could feel it. The room felt smaller. I could hear its breath, slow and rattling. And worst of all, I could feel its claws gripping the back of my chair. I ran. I locked myself in my bathroom. And I've been here ever since. The final hour. The duct tape is peeling off the window. I don't know how long I've been in here. I tried to call someone, anyone, but my phone only plays static. I tried to leave my house, but the doors won't open. The air is thick, like the whole place is sealed in plastic wrap. And the whispers, I can hear them now. Not just in my head. From the walls. From the floorboards. From the window. Let me in. The duct tape just fell off completely. The glass is cracking again. And behind it, that thing is smiling. It knows I have nowhere left to run. It's coming inside.